Good afternoon, everybody. James here with the Political Insider. We got a special treat today. Ms. Scottie Nell Hughes is joining us. Big Trump surrogate. You've seen her on TV before. She's awesome, really insightful. We brought her on to give you kind of a preview of the 2018 elections. Now, well, basically, welcome, Scottie. Thank you for joining us. We have a lot of your fans are here, and they're happy to see you.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you on a very important discussion, as many states like my own here in Tennessee will be having their midterms, having their primaries next week. So this is actually a very busy time for many people trying to figure out which candidate to vote for, and is it worth actually showing up to the polls?
Well, what do you think about that? Well, let's start at the state level. We'll start at Tennessee, red state, right? You know, this is a kind of Trump country. Would you say that?
You would think so. That's what we're supposed to be. We're number one, according to the American Conservative Union, for the second year in a row. And the reason why, let's talk about Tennessee, not only because it is close to me, I obviously know a lot about it, but a lot of these Midwestern heartland states have the same kind of demographic makeup of Tennessee. They were Trump states in 2016. They're workers. Tennessee is an income tax-free state, so we reflect a lot of the same kind of economics as Texas and Florida and how we get our base. So why is it in Tennessee that for our governor, for our Senate election, we could have a chance that Bob Corker, who's stepping down, have a Democrat replace him? Why does a Democrat have a chance to actually be elected as a senator from the state of Tennessee? And a lot of states are facing the same issue. Why is it all of a sudden the Democrats are supposedly in play? And the truth is, in many cases, they are. Well, that's if you listen to the mainstream media these days. And that, I think, is why you're seeing so many Democrats feeling like they're encouraged that there could be this blue wave coming over across the United States.
Right, yeah. We hear all the talk about the blue wave. Democrats are supposed to be excited. You know, they're energized. They're in the opposition. You know, it's historically, politically, opposition sides tend to do well in midterms, that kind of thing. But, you know, news keeps coming out. We just saw great economic numbers this morning. Second quarter, 4% economic growth. There's a lot of good trends going for the U.S. You know, a lot of people give Trump credit for that kind of thing. Democrats have the anger, they have the opposition, but do they have the substance to actually, you know, wage a real war of ideas?
Well, it's interesting that you say substance and war of ideas, because that's actually one of the main tools that they are using in regards to motivating the Democrats to the polls. And whether you're talking about the primary or actually the general election in November, it's called fear. Fear is an amazing tool. Both sides politically use it often, but in this case, you have a large amount of fear, and a lot of it is centered around the Supreme Court nomination. Right now on the left, they're motivating their voters to go and vote because they think that Roe versus Wade will be reversed and women will no longer be allowed to have the right to have an abortion in this country. That is so far of fear-mongering and so far of a stretch of what possibly could happen. And they know that. The key is the people who are leading these types of charges know that they are falsely trying to create this fear to motivate people, but they don't care. And so shame on them, and shame on Republicans that use fear. How about if we actually use truth and what it could happen if certain people are elected? You know, when people went to the polls for President Trump in 2016, a lot of people went and voted not because of President Trump. They were very unfamiliar with his policies necessarily. They didn't know what kind of leader he was going to be, but because they didn't like Hillary. Well, you know, it doesn't matter. In the end, there's one winner on election night, and the loser goes and takes a walk in the woods. Or that's what happened this time. So the key is about using fear. Democrats seem to be using it to motivate their base. The key is, if you're going to fight a campaign against fear, the only way to fight that is with an organized truth strategy where you're saying down by down, where common sense starts to come in. People go, you know what they're saying, that's not even constitutionally possible that you can take away abortion across the United States federally. What they can do is you can invoke the 10th Amendment and each state go in and take away abortion. You know, like I said, common sense, trust the voter. And that's the one thing, unfortunately, we've kind of lost in this country over the last few years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a common playbook with the other side, with Democrats, even if it's disregarding the whole Supreme Court thing, right? Get rid of that. And you're looking at any kind of nationalized election, the Democrats will always say, they're going to come for your birth control, they're going to come for abortion, they're going to come for all types of these kinds of things. They'll take away your weekend, they'll take away, your 40-hour week, that kind of thing. They always use that kind of tactic. But it didn't work this last time. It didn't work in 2016. Republicans were able to use their own tactics to win. So, yeah, the politics of fear, I mean, they're a huge motivating force, but they can be beat, as we've seen. So do you think Republicans going into 2018, they have a slew of victories, some not so much, some losses also. Do you think they have the mettle to actually compete against Democrats, compete against this fear wave they say is coming?
Well, I think it's our election to lose, believe it or not, for the first time in midterms. I agree with you. Normally they say in a midterm that it's usually the party that is not in power usually has a better chance because people are upset at what is going on in Washington, D.C. or at just the lack of anything going on in Washington, D.C. and they want to change. That's how Trump got elected. People wanted to change. The difference is if you turn off your television and you actually go and you look at your paycheck, that is the best advertisement for the Republicans they have right now because the majority of middle-class Americans saw a raise in their paycheck due to Trump's tax plan. That is the number one reason right there why I believe that the Republicans have a great chance of maintaining the House and the Senate. You also look at the other things when we're talking about 3.7 million jobs created since President Trump came in. You have 4% unemployment. That's the lowest since 1969. And that's also the Hispanics, the African Americans, the women's. That's in minority groups are seeing low unemployment. You're seeing that the RNC's raising money more than the Democrats are. All of these factors, I think, are the reason why you're going to continue, not say the red tidal wave, but you're going to see us be able to maintain the House and the Senate. Now, let's go back to fear real quick because this is where the Republicans have a problem. Because we also go on fear. We talk about they're going to come and grab your guns and they're going to take them away. And there's a reason why, because there's actually a little spark of truth to that possibly that we see all the time. So there is a little reason why there's some kindling on it. But right now you see one of the biggest fears that should motivate the Republicans should be talking about that if the House and the Senate were able to become Democratic, they were able to be Democrat controlled. I guarantee the day after they were sworn in, you would see a call for impeachment, a strong call for impeachment, not just these little flighty people here and there. You would see an organized movement by the Democrat Party to call for President Trump's impeachment. That is like they're motivating people saying, hey, listen, you get us elected, we're going to impeach the president. Republicans should be motivated to say, listen, if they take control of the House and Senate, they're going to impeach the president. You might not be happy with what the Republicans in leadership have done so far the last 18 months. There's some definite hiccups and some definite lack of communication and productivity that President Trump's agenda would like to see happen. However, at least it's not going reverse. At least we're, and unfortunately, if we saw the Democrats get into office, it would be the next 2 years until we got to 2020 of just a knockout brawl with the ultimate goal of the Democrats would be to impeach President Trump.
So do you think that's maybe politics of fear going too far? They have so much wind at their back when they're using emotion to get people riled up that they're going all the way. Now, we've seen Pelosi and Schumer kind of push back on the idea of impeachment a little bit, but, hypothetically, say Democrats take at least the House. Do you think Pelosi will fold on impeachment? Do you think she'll be, there'll be such energy if they take the House that she'll just say, oh, well, fine, let's do it. You got all these young people coming in, all these young members, they want impeachment. If I want to keep my speakership and leadership position, I have to support it.
100% absolutely. If they take control, that's exactly where they're going to go for it. That's why you have to be careful. In states where there are Democrats that are running that potentially have a good chance of winning, and I say decent chance of winning, it's because they're running as a conservative. They're running as a Republican. They're running as pro-life. They're running that they agree with President Trump's agenda when it's good for their state, but they'll disagree if they push back. Make no mistake, the first vote they will do when they get to Congress or when they get the opportunity is to vote for a Democrat leadership. And that right there is who's going to control the agenda. And their agenda is to impeach Trump. And unfortunately, it seems like they have a lot of cheerleaders that are encouraging that. And these cheerleaders are seen 24/7 every day, everywhere. So we are fighting a lot. We're up against a lot. But once again, in the end, the truth's going to win. And the truth comes down to when people pick up their paycheck, when people continue to see that our country has actually been very safe these past few, since President Trump's come in. I feel safer in my home right now. We hope we continue to do that. President Trump's aggressive strategy to strengthen our border and to know who is exactly coming into our country and what their motivation is. Those sorts of efforts right there, I think, is why you're going to see that whatever we're hearing on being talked about in the airwaves is just falling deaf, because either A, people aren't listening, or B, people are saying, you know what, they don't matter anymore, because I can see it from my own eyes, the benefit of having President Trump at the head of our United States.
Right. So you mentioned Tennessee at the beginning. You said that Bob Corker's leaving, and remind me again, who's the Republican? Is it Marsha Blackburn? Is that the front runner for Tennessee for Senate?
Well, we're going to have our primary next week, but at this point, it looks like Marsha Blackburn will be our Republican front runner against Phil Bredesen, a very popular moderate governor who is actually a Democrat, but governed more like a Republican than our last two Republican governors had. So he's very well liked, especially in a very rural area. His agenda has always been, as his commercials say, I'm running for Trump. When he does something good for Tennessee, I'll support it. When it's something bad, as he says in the tariffs, Trump's tariff policy, I'm going to fight him for it. The problem with that is, and this is where, while neither one of them necessarily have real primary opponents, what they're doing, the National RNC and National DNC is looking across the country at where they actually have a chance at it. And if our Republican early voting numbers, Republican primary numbers are lower, now granted, at this point, they're still 3-1 to the Democrats in Tennessee, but that's still a lot weaker than it's been in past. If they see they have a chance, they are going to go for it. And then they're going to look all the way, all down ballot in congressional districts, in state house seats, state senate seats, even all the way down to the county dog catcher. Democrats will feel like they have a better chance of winning if at the top of the ticket, they might actually have a chance of winning.
Wow, that's crazy to think about. You know, the conventional wisdom is currently Democrats have a good chance of taking the House, given how things are split up. But the Senate, you know, they're fighting an uphill battle. There's so many red states that have Democrats that are up for election. But, you know, the way you describe Tennessee, it's like, well, you know, maybe they have a shot in some of these cases. I think you have places like Missouri and North Dakota and those kind of places that are red state, you know, deep red. Trump won by big margins, and yet they have a Democrat up for election who's still polling fairly well. So what do you see happening? What do you see happening specifically with the Senate? Can Republicans hold it? Do Democrats have a chance? I mean, I would assume if Democrats have a chance with the Senate, they have a very good chance of taking back the House.
Well, let me say this. Let me put your minds at ease on this one, because I think we are going to continue to hold. And my opinion has changed since the beginning of December, for one reason only. We have a Supreme Court justice nominee. If Democrats were smart right now, they would actually confirm who we have on there. Because if they don't confirm him, it is going to motivate both sides, and we are the dominant side right now that are motivated to get to the polls that are paying attention. So if Democrats really wanted to have a chance at the House, but as long as they have not confirmed this Supreme Court justice, then they are risking that they are going to motivate every Republican voter in November to show up at the polls. So that is why I do believe we're going to continue to hold on to the House and the Senate. Now, here's where we get to be into interesting territory. Are Republicans, we've had this issue back during when we first took the House and the Senate, are Republicans actually Republicans? Are they going to continue fighting? Because, see, President Trump has had to fight the Democrats, but they've also had to fight his own Congress. I mean, it has literally been pulling teeth to get Republicans, and most of the things that he's fighting them on are things that these guys went back to their districts and promised that they were going to fight for. So when you talk about all of these congressmen that went back to their districts and said, I'm going to vote to defund Planned Parenthood, guess what? Planned Parenthood is still in our budget, and Republicans continue to send these same folks back into office. So once we get to these, once we get through 2018, we maintain the House and the Senate, all eyes turn to 2020. And then it's going to be, are these Republicans finally, I mean, they look for every excuse to fight President Trump on. Are they finally going to get on board knowing that they get a mandate of their constituents to actually advance the agenda that President Trump has promised? Or are they going to fight him, and then we're going to have a bigger problem on our hands, and it's called 2020, because I guarantee the day after the 2018 election, win or lose, both parties are going to immediately start talking about their presidential nominee for 2020.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they're already talking about it now. You know, there's a ton of speculation. You got a few folks making some moves in that direction. It's crazy. And now you mentioned the Supreme Court. So a lot of folks say, you know, Trump won largely, not maybe not largely, but the big factor in his win was the Supreme Court. A lot of Republican voters who normally wouldn't be super excited to vote for him, they came out because they wanted to keep the Scalia seat. Now, it's interesting you mentioned that. It's Democrats are smart. They confirm this Supreme Court justice and take a little bit of the wind out of the Republican sails. And I think McConnell has indicated that he wants to try and confirm Kavanaugh before the election. Do you think they're going to try and push it back to try and boost motivation going in?
No, because I think the traditional is definitely to go on and get him done, get him confirmed, and push him through across the board. It's definitely a little bit more of a risk for them. If Republicans have the vote, call the vote, go on and get it done.
Yeah.
But either way, it's a win-win situation. I know Democrats. There's a reason why they cursed when that announcement was made. They realized this hurt them immensely. Mm-hmm. This did take the wind out of their sails of their dinghy boat that they were trying to ride a blue wave across the United States. We now just became a puddle.
Yeah.
And those are usually already located in little areas. The other thing that's going to help us is, yes, the Republicans are splintered, even though we're doing a better job of being somewhat polite to each other right now, just based on Trump, what he's accomplishing. But it's the Democrats who are really right now trying to figure out their identity going to 2018, 2020. Mm-hmm. You've got the Bernie Sanders supporters, those definitely highly progressive / socialist / I don't know what you're going to call them.
Yeah.
They keep reinventing their name, but the identity still stays the same.
Right.
They believe the government should control everything for the majority except for the richest and the wealthiest, because that's usually who a lot of them are. Or the government provide free for everything.
Right.
That right there, the Democrats are trying to figure out, is that what their party is going to be? Is that who they need to cater to? And if they do that, are they going to lose more of that middle base coming over the Republicans saying, that's not us? That's not what we believe in. We actually believe fiscally we are conservative. It's socially is where we fall more liberal. You look at these progressives, they are definitely very liberal, both socially and economically. So I think that actually is something the Republicans need to be plying up more, is they don't have an identity. Do they go after Cortez, the lovely young lady that was elected in New York?
Yep.
God bless her. But it's, you don't need on-the-site training for what you supposedly want to do through an interview.
Right.
That's not where you learn information. If she doesn't, so you've got that as the face that everybody's cheering until they realize that she really doesn't understand the concepts of foreign policy and the votes that she's going to take. Or are they going to continue to try to go down the road, the more traditional? And they did that with their vote as DNC chair. He's obviously not very popular considering the Republicans are out fundraising for them. Mm-hmm. So the Democrats, I think, are actually in a lot more splintered. They might seem motivated. They might be the squeaky wheel. They definitely have the cover on the airwaves that we, the Republicans, don't necessarily enjoy. However, as we're finding out, there's lots of places that you can get your news. There's lots of places you can get your information. And I think that reality is actually going to help conservatives and, more importantly, help us, the voter, make informed decisions when we go into the voting booth.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there is a brewing civil war on the Democrat side. And like you said, I think the only glue really holding them together is, motivation to stop Trump and to take Congress and to take back the White House. So that'll be interesting. I mean, hypothetically speaking, Democrats take the House, take the Senate. Do you think that let me take it back really quick. Republican civil war that went on when Obama was in office, right? You had the Tea Party wing challenging and primarying a lot of these establishment Republicans. If Democrats win back Congress, do you think Republicans go back to that kind of civil war? They saying, you know what? These guys couldn't even hold their seats. They couldn't repeal Obamacare when they were in power. They held Congress. They held the White House. They couldn't get their number one promise done. Do we try and get some of these flaky guys out?
Well, that's the problem. I think it's going to be the exact opposite, and this is what's scary the most. If we somehow as Republicans, if they lose the House and Senate, what's going to start immediately? And it's a game that they've been wanting to start since 2016, probably the last day of the primaries going to 2016. It's going to be called the blame game. Mm-hmm. And they're going to try to blame every Trump supporter, every person saying, you know what? See, look, look, you brought in Russia. You can't win without Russia. Or they're going to try to blame the people that supported President Trump, supported his agenda, whether they were Republican or Democrat. That's what's going to start. That's going to be incredibly damaging. And Republicans are very good at eating our own. I mean, we literally eat each other alive, and we make sure that you eat it all the way down to one little bone of breath. And that one little bone is the thing that we continue to pick at, and we let them just literally torture that. That's what we do as Republicans. We torture each other. Democrats aren't necessarily so bad, or they torture each other behind closed doors, and then we wait for WikiLeaks to tell us 2 years later actually what was said and happened.
Yes.
But that's the thing Republicans need to realize, that this is a huge if, because I don't think it's necessarily going to happen, but even if we lose one House seat, I still think you're going to see a blame game. The majority of people that are in the Beltway, the majority of people that are in the media want to say, look, Trump is losing in popularity. And that's exactly the echo chamber they live on. We cannot let us destroy each other. Reality is we probably will go after each other and try to put the blame game. And it's just going to be, once again, we're going to have to rely on the truth and the passion of the people outside of Washington, D.C., New York City, and L.A. Nothing against you folks. But we're going to have to rely on literally the truth and the rest of America to keep this country going until President Trump's agenda has been accomplished.
Awesome. Okay, last question. Prediction for 2018, what do you see happening? Do you see Republicans keeping both House and Senate and by a decent margin?
We're going to keep House and Senate. We actually might lose one or two House seats, but it's not going to be enough to flip the House. But here's the one problem that I do see the day after the election. Is we start talking about 2020. Yeah. And I don't know about you. I never got over 2016. And 2018 has definitely been another sort of very much a challenge in these contentious states like my own. So the problem is, are we as conservatives, and I'm talking, and let me define the word conservative. If you can quote Barry Goldwater, or you know who he is, or you for once even thought about naming your dog or your child after him, you might be a conservative. Other than that, don't call yourself a conservative. But that's what we've got to figure out. How are we going to fight this fatigue? Because it is definitely, we've been all fighting it. At least it's 2008, 2010, but since 2015, it has truly not, every day we have had to continue to fight. And I don't want to see this base, I don't want to see this continue to be worn down, because it's hard to be a Trump conservative in our country today. I saw a video, and I think you're playing it right now on your Facebook page, of a man wearing a Trump hat just being berated and beaten up and standing on the Trump star. It is extremely hard right now to be a public Trump supporter. And that right there is what scares me going into 2020, because if you think it's bad now, it is going to get worse, because the other side is getting definitely more dangerous, more violent in their threats. And the second that we even react back to it, they're going to harp on us like we're the bad guys. Right. We are literally walking through a field of dynamite right now. And I am praying that everybody keeps their mind and their senses cool. And in the end, make your voice known, but make it most known when you go to the voter box. Great words of wisdom. Well, thank you so much, Scottie, for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thank you for your insight. 2018, I mean, it's getting more intense as we get closer. You know, there's good news for Republicans, good news for the president, but the other side just seems hell-bent on tearing everything down. So it'll be crazy. But thank you again for joining us, Scottie. Please make sure everybody follow her on Twitter and Facebook. Check out her website, her homepage. It's awesome. Great stuff. Thank you again for joining us, Scottie. Thank you for having me, folks. Keep up the good work.